What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 67 of Thoughtful Banter podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Matthew, with my co-host, Hussein.
Yes, sir.
And it's crazy. Last episode, we talked about Iran, some geopolitical things. Now we're talking about it again. I don't want you guys to get bored with the topics, of course. This podcast isn't dedicated to just solely one subject. But I think it's interesting because last week we talked about it. We gave our ideas of what will happen. And Hussein pretty much said what will happen. It's kind of crazy.
Recap it real quick. Recap.
So last episode we just briefly stated, like usual, Iran's probably not going to do any kind of very severe outward sign of aggression. But if they were going to, now would probably be the time, due to Israel really fumbling their geopolitical bag and standing just with the world. And Iran did strike. So just to recap, earlier this month, Israel attacked Iran's consulate in Damascus, Syria, their embassy. And when you bomb an embassy, you are bombing a country, right? If you guys don't know how an embassy works, it's sovereign land of the land that the embassy is on. So when you bomb an embassy, you're bombing someone else's country. Iran had enough. They swung back. What was it, yesterday? Iran shot more than 300 projectiles, including around 170 drones and over 120 ballistic missiles. These weren't just fired from Iran. They were fired from Iran and their allies, so Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon. So this happened. Now, we're going to give the big picture, right? Because we're not here on this podcast to give like any kind of just one opinion or side. I'm just going to tell you guys my observations because I've been sticking to this on Twitter a lot. If you see someone who is like super pro-US, super pro-Israel, their stance on the attack is, we destroyed 99.9% of projectiles. Iran didn't really do any damage. On the pro-Palestine, pro-Iran side, you're seeing Iran really put in work, and damage was done.
And all the edits, bro. All the all the edits. But anyways.
Yeah. People are like, Iran really showed up, put in work, and there's clips of people in Palestine were like cheering, seeing the
and
missiles
there's clips
come.
of like Israelis like fleeing, like basically scared and like
they were
leaving.
definitely scared.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Clips of like within Israel, like from Snapchat and stuff. Israelis are just
dipping,
it was a nation. It was a state of alert. Israel called on the UK and America to come to help shoot down the missiles. Now, funny enough, and this is exactly what you were saying.
It's interesting. They experience like a fraction of what like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what Palestinians experience pretty regularly, and they're just completely done.
Not handling it too well, huh?
Yeah. Anyways, continue.
A little poetic justice. Now what's crazy is like, and this is exactly what you said, right? And this is so freaking interesting to me. Of course, on the front, right? Joe Biden, POTUS is tweeting things like, we are completely against the attack, right? But we have to look at language.
They even reached out to Iran through Qatar.
Yeah,
to get
that's
them
what's
to
saying.
stop. Yeah,
they're not talking to Iran directly.
No,
the sources are. They're talking through the Arab nations. Yeah. Iran's like, we ain't talking to you, bro. So it's very interesting. Like, you get a lot of information if you pay attention to the kind of language people are using, right? America's language, of course, is, oh, hey, this was terrible, we don't like it. But it's not harsh enough in the sense of, if you don't do what we're saying, we're gonna strike. Because America's like, I don't know if the states are low-key happy. Like, bro, we've been trying to slap this kid. Israel, for making things hard for us internationally speaking. But America's not doing anything. And Iran sent a message. Iran sent a message before they attacked. They said, do not intervene. They said, do not intervene.
I didn't know that.
Or they threatened to bomb like U.S. military bases.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
in the region.
And there were no like civilian casualties as far as I understand.
As far as I know, no.
Yeah, I don't even think the IDF or anything has reported.
No, so I mean,
civilian casualties.
According to Twitter, again, I'm no expert, no journalist, but according to Twitter, the remarks are Iran just went after specific military bases, military targets. They didn't target civilians. They didn't target
I do have
hospitals.
a question. Do you think they would have done it if the consulate hadn't been bombed? Because a lot of people are saying like a lot of I guess people who are anti-Iran, including Muslims like that don't like Shias, saying things like, oh, Iran didn't do this for Gaza. Iran just did it for themselves. If the embassy hadn't been bombed, they wouldn't have done this. Because why did it take them X amount of time to respond to anything when they've been talking all this smack from the beginning? So what do you think?
I think it's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. Do you want to read the tweet?
It's kind of cancer and it's kind of long.
So this is from there's a statement from Xavier Palfreman.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not saying his name right. I don't know, but it's followed by Andrew Tate and Sneeko. So he's like pretty vehemently anti-Shia, right? And this is the thing. It's like with our own, like, this is something we've at some point in the podcast it's going to get addressed, right? The Shia remarks. The only people who have ever seen whenever I see Muslims who are anti-Iran, the vast majority of the time, I mean, like, vehemently anti-Iran, who aren't Iranian, they're always like really, really, really Sunni, and just like they have the stance of kind of Shias aren't Muslim. So it's interesting because I think people can provide different. I think people in their biases are able to provide different truths to things. And what I mean by that is, for example, is like, because if you hate Shias and you don't think Shias are Muslims, then when Shias aren't telling the truth, you catch it because you already didn't like them. Mm-hmm. So like people in the ways that they're wrong can find truth. And I think it's interesting because he actually basically, in this long tweet, I'll read it. All right. Iran's very, very clever. Their attack is being portrayed by certain people or groups as they're doing this for Gaza. It's basically a great PR opportunity to win over many naive, emotionally volatile Muslims who will see Iran as defending Gaza. Wow, at least Iran is attacking Israel. Meanwhile, Sunni state, blah, blah. I mean, it's true. Sunni state is doing nothing. Jordan is doing absolutely nothing. Jordan is siding with the people killing the Muslims. Thank you. But in reality, none of this has anything to do with helping Gaza. And remember,
interestingly, he says blah, 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 but he never comes back and addresses it. All he talks about is how this is basically a ploy for Iran to spread Shiism in the throughout the Muslim world.
Basically.
But he doesn't say anything about actually like the states that are in power that are not Shia and what they've done or what they're like working against even.
So in the top comment here says, I'm calling it now. They're going back out of the conflict soon. It's all propaganda to spread Shiism even more. This has almost 1,000 likes. Xavier replies, many Muslims are falling for it, sadly. It's big for propaganda. So here's the thing, right? This is interesting. And I thought about, I was mulling over this point a bit. Did I say that right? Mulling. I was mulling over this point, right? We can't. There's no way of knowing exactly what someone's intention is for doing something. Mm-hmm. When we talk about a country or a state, we talk about like as a person. Really, it's thousands of people who have different says, and then they make up an action. There could be truth to this. I think there is truth to this. I mean, he's right? They didn't strike until now, right? And Iran's always been talking about striking, but they haven't striked. When did they strike? Yeah, they struck whenever their embassy was hit. Now you can make the argument like, okay, they just don't care at all, and that's all a lie. But also, I think the truth of the matter is, whether Iran wants to strike or not, they can't without getting retaliation from the U.S. except in this circumstance.
Except in circumstances like these.
Because this is
not this one specific, like circumstances like these.
Yeah. Because they're in international law.
Kind of low stakes.
This was legal.
Also
in international law.
Yeah, because there were no civilians targeted. There were no hospitals targeted.
And there's a direct retaliation to what they did to your country. Like, versus you watching someone do to another country. They literally did this to your country.
But it's not only that. I think there's like multiple reasons why the U.S. is like hands off with this. One, because Biden himself doesn't really care for the guy. Like, you hear him talking about like Netanyahu, that is.
They're not locked in.
They don't really have that great of a relationship. You've heard the State Department talk about like, hey, we're trying to push Israel this direction. they've drawn hard lines about where Israel can continue their settlements and where they need to stop. And on top of all of that, the public opinion of like Israel has gone down the drain.
Yeah,
like it's
completely.
like in the toilet. So like this was like the perfect amount of like it was just like a perfect storm. It was like a perfect set of circumstances for it was like low stakes enough that the U.S. didn't feel like they needed to actually come to Israel's aid, and are actually telling them like, "Hey, back down." And then on top, and that's also because of all like just the kind of climate that we're in right now, right? So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think Iran did it for just selfish reasons?
I think it's hard. You can never know these things, right?
Exactly.
But I think it's hard to feel like that at least wasn't part of it, given the proximity that the two events occurred.
Of course, yeah.
And yeah, that's what I'll say. I think you'd have to be like you'd have to be really good to convince me that nothing in their self-interest played a part in this decision, especially after what had occurred before in Syria.
And I'm confused.
Which is not necessarily even a bad thing.
I was about to say,
which is not necessarily even a bad thing.
do y'all not see like the hate? Some people hate Shias more than they even love Palestine. Like this is an example of that. You clearly hate Shiaism so much that even when a Shia, maybe for a let's assume it was for a selfish reason. Okay, was it not good for your people? Why are you upset? You know, I think some people are just never going to be happy, and
that's true too. That's the reason this tweet exists, honestly.
Yeah, it's like you just really don't like Shias, and that's the sentiment from this stuff. And my question to you is this, right? This sectarianism that we have, this is just my opinion, right? Not Hussein's. I'm not trying to get both of us canceled. I really think this sectarianism we have between Sunni and Shias is really a cancer to the Ummah, because it's destroying the Ummah. And I think, you know, Sunnis and Shias, we both have very strong beliefs. I think we have both strong beliefs for very valid reasons, but people need to zoom out. Like the reason why a Shia has a belief and a Sunni has a belief is for the same reason, is because we have hadith that say things. And it's important to look at people, like not to demonize them and think, well, that person is like just a Wahhabi or that person is just a shirk Shia, right? Like, listen, we have scholars who are both smarter than ourselves who we follow, and they have these opinions, educated opinions. And at the end of the day, Allah's going to tell us what the truth is in the Day of Judgment. In the meantime, we're getting slaughtered by people who just aren't Muslims.
Yeah, I guess on this point, I am a little bit confused at like the vitriol and the hate that some of these people have for Shias. Because like one, we're like a fraction of the Muslim population. We're like a minority. We're a minority within the Muslim population, like a big minority. That's one. And then two, even if you do think we're not Muslim, there are other sects, like I'm just thinking from it myself. There are other sects that call themselves and consider themselves Muslim that, according to Shia standards, aren't Muslim. And I don't think about them.
Yeah.
I really don't think about them. And I'm not, like, I don't know, maybe if they slaughtered meat for me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm probably not going to eat that. But outside of like that kind of direct interaction, I'm not on Twitter beefing with, ripping to shreds like the hadith and chain of narrators of other sects I don't agree with, or I don't even consider Muslim. Like, I'm not going to the Nation of Islam like, bro, you guys are not even Muslim because you could believe a prophet after the Prophet Muhammad came. Like, this is not a thing I'm doing. Like, they don't even come into my mind.
Yeah,
it's weird.
But I think specifically that the Sunni and Shia beef, it goes deep. Like it's years old. Yeah. You know, I will just like, if I could just provide like a thought exercise, like at some point, do you not think the actions we use at some point, do we think that actions matter more than beliefs? And what I mean by that is like, I look at all these Arab countries around Palestine that are Sunni majority countries, and they ain't doing jack. Jordan is literally aiding Israel. Okay. Egypt is building up walls like Trump to prevent Palestinians from coming in. Right.
Saudi also helped,
Saudi.
In this
Saudi's the worst.
In this recent strike, they helped. What is it? Missile defense. They helped in the missile defense. Israeli missile.
Saudi is the worst of all because Saudi is the king. Saudi is in the position to be the actual king of the Muslim world because they're the stewards of Mecca, right? They are the stewards of Mecca, and I just want to ask, like, the people who are just really anti-Shia, right? I just want you to, like, okay, who are your leaders and what are they doing, and is this your Islam? And I just want to ask, like, if Shias are just kafir, munafiqs, terrible, what leads us to do better than your leaders?
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean, again, if there was some hypothetical country that was the Islam, the literal nation of Islam, for example, there's a country in like 90% of the country's nation, and they sent a missile strike to an enemy after they had been bombed by that enemy. Probably the last thing I'd think is, oh, they're doing this to spread Nation of Islam. They're doing this to spread the message of the Nation of Islam. Yeah. So it's just weird. It is weird.
It's like, get over your hate.
Now that you mention it, it's like it's super interesting and strange. Like, I don't exactly understand it.
Well, it's just hate. I don't know what else to call it.
Maybe they think it's like more like it's catching, like it's like liberalism. Like, you know how liberalism is, like, a lot of Muslims are fighting against what they perceive as liberalism or actual liberalism because it's very popular and in right now. So it's like catching on like that. Perhaps Shiism is like that. I don't know. And maybe my position would be different if the ideology of the Nation of Islam was actually taking youth and converting them. I doubt that's happening. I doubt. But that's like the one scenario maybe I could, like, understand the weird hyperfixation.
I don't know, man. I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand how, like, even the people are becoming Muslim because of the stuff that's happening in Palestine. Like, the whole Muslim world knows what our biggest issue is.
In right now,
it's popping, it's happening for many different reasons. Palestine's bringing a lot of attention to it. We all, like, so the whole Muslim ummah knows this is the biggest issue we have for Muslims right now, Palestine. I just don't understand how you don't think to yourself, I don't understand. If I were a Sunni, I'd be really curious what Shias believe. I'd be really curious if I'm looking at the Sunni countries that are the richest nations. They got all the oil money. They're in the pockets of the U.S. They're the neighbors. They're watching idly by, eating popcorn. And then you see one of the only countries who's doing something is, like, the only Shia country. I don't know how you don't ask yourself, I wonder what they believe in.
Yeah, I also find it hard to believe that, like, the decision to launch those missiles was because they wanted, like, this will make more people Shia. Yeah. Like, that just seems absolutely ridiculous.
Like, you're overthinking so hard.
Like, this is going to make more people.
More like, if we don't defend ourselves, that we're going to get trampled on over and over. Yeah. I mean, again, like, it's been a long line of proxy attacks back and forth.
Also, the U.S., this is everything about this was, like, really well timed. The U.S. does not want to get into a long, freaking protracted war in the Middle East on behalf of Israel if they can anyway avoid it.
And elections coming up.
Elections coming up. And this is, like, the last thing that the U.S. or Biden wants right now. At least right now. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 67 of the Thoughtful Banter podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. We out. Peace.